Hey retailers, welcome to this week's training. It's Alvin, making sure the mic's on. It is, and we're going to be talking about a really important topic today, and it's all about managing your expenses in your bricks and mortar store. So all of us know that we need to manage our expenses. Like it's there, we see it hopefully on our P&L every month, but very few of us actually take the time to come up with a process to review our expenses. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, what I call the expense reduction approach. This is the same process that I use with my clients, with my brick and mortar retail clients. And I'm going to go through it with you today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief outline on what to do and how to go about doing it. There are examples in there which I'll just gloss over, but you should be able to work it out. And as always, if you need some help with this stuff, reach out and I or myself can help you work through it. So as always, on these Thursdays, there is a worksheet associated with it. So if you want a copy of the worksheet, just write the word worksheet below and let's roll into it. So one of the biggest mistakes that we make as bricks and mortar retailers is really, like I mentioned, neglecting our expenses. And this can, we have higher operating costs, and failing to analyze costs and neglecting the operational efficiencies that can lead to increased operating expenses can be a really, really big mistake because it eats into your profits and reduces the financial health of your store. So not only do you get reduced profit margins, you're probably in a cash crunch because you don't know where the money is in your business. And the cause of this, well, of course, there are so many causes for us making these mistakes. I think expense reduction is one of those things where we sort of put it on the back burner, or perhaps we only look at it when we notice a sudden increase in some of our expenses. Perhaps our utility expenses is usually the main one that I find that bricks and mortar retailers, that's when it starts to get their attention. So they're one of the main causes of it. And once we get this right, not only will we have improved profit margins, because by paying attention to this on a monthly or quarterly basis, you're ultimately reducing your expenses and driving up your profitability. Your store is going to be far more financially stable because, as we know, reduced expenses can lead to a much healthier cash flow and greater financial stability. And the best thing is greater peace of mind and flexibility in managing your store on a day-to-day level. Also, with increased funds available, you can then start to reinvest in your business, in business growth. And that's always a good thing, which will give you much better competitive advantage, because you can then start to grow your business, and then you'll have the ability to retain customers. So they're some of the main benefits that you have from getting this expense reduction management part of it right. So there are a couple of things that you need to do. And this is where I want to say, like, we all know, like I mentioned before, we need to do this kind of thing. But where we fall apart as bricks and mortar retailers is in the ability to systematize things, which is something that we all need to work on to leverage ourselves out of the day-to-day. But by systematizing this aspect of the business, you can look forward to incremental increases in your cash flow and profitability. And once you have a system, then it's about following that system. And really, none of these strategies is rocket science. Everybody knows this, like I mentioned. It's the implementation that is the key here. So let me run through what you need to do to execute this in your store. So the first thing is you need to start to categorize your expenses. So hopefully you're looking at your P&L every month, given to you by your bookkeeper, or you're pulling the report from your accounting software, and you need to categorize your expenses into certain groups. So really basic things like utilities, suppliers, communication expenses, etc., so on and so forth. So that's the first step, because what we need to then start to do is the categorization allows you to um, further manage your expenses. So it's part of the process. So you need to start to categorize your expenses. The next thing is you need to come up with a way on how to reduce your expenses. So, like I mentioned, there are so many strategies that you can use to reduce your expenses. But one of the main ones, apart from the fact that you're going to be now looking at this, because as we know, as soon as you start working on something, or that whole what does it say? It says what gets measured gets managed. So once you start doing this process, you're automatically going to start to see efficiencies. But my biggest tip for you here is the best way to reduce your expenses after you've categorized them is to come up with a plan. And the first thing you should be doing on that plan is to actually call that particular provider or supplier or utilities provider and start to have a conversation with them about how you can start to reduce that bill. So I keep harping on about creating a system. So you need to make sure that this is not a once-off occurrence. You create a system so that this continually happens in your store, and it's going to continually happen whilst you're sitting on the beach. So you need to make sure that you create some sort of system that works for you with respect to this reducing expenses. Part of that system involves putting it in a calendar. So whatever calendar, hopefully, whoops, shouldn't assume people use a calendar. Hopefully you use a calendar system, whether it's a physical calendar, whether it's a digital version, whether you're using Trello or some of those other boards, digital boards, digital calendars. Make sure that you're doing something, because that's the best way. One of the best ways to remind yourself, set automatic reminders. You just set it and forget it, which is what I really, really love. You need to put it in the calendar. So this is the expense evaluation worksheet, which, like I mentioned, I won't go through in any detail. It's self-explanatory. I save the detail for my clients. So if you want to think about working together with me, send me a message. I'll send the team a message and we can have a conversation about that. It's here. I should probably mention again, if you want a copy of this worksheet, just write the word worksheet in the comment section below and you can have a copy of this. So basically, all we're doing is taking a systematic approach to evaluate our expenses. So the category I spoke about earlier, and then from there, it's just listing all the expenses within the category, getting clear about what these expenses are and how they go about contributing to the profitability and the objectives of your business, and then looking at some cost reduction potential. So how are you going to reduce these particular expenses? Excuse me, I need to grab some water. How are you going to go about reducing these particular expenses, and also how are you going to monitor and measure? So as retailers, we're not really good at tracking, measuring, monitoring. It's one of the habits that I try and get all my clients into, and it's a habit that you need to get into, because that's the only way that you can really scientifically and objectively measure your progress, apart from also the financial incentive with reducing your expenses. But when it gets to the stage when you're setting this up and you're doing so many different things, you need a way to track and measure what you're doing. So that's what that part of the worksheet is about: monitoring, mentoring, and measuring. I beg your pardon. So once you've got all of that listed, then I've just given an example there. I won't go through that in any detail. And then what we need to do is come up with a plan, a system for reducing the expenses. And that's where this expense reduction worksheet comes through. And you need to fill this out to the best of your ability. And it's a great tool. It's basically listing your expenses, how much it's costing you every month, what measures are you going to implement. The real important thing here, and the most simplest thing, is the implementation start and end date. It sounds so simple, but it's not until you actually write that down, when you're going to be implementing this by, when you're going to be getting it done by, when you're starting, and those kind of things. That's when you start to get real results, because then you're holding yourself accountable. You have a system in place for following up, and that is the key to all of this. So that's what you need to do, is fill out this worksheet, and for each as part of your expense reduction process. Okay, another worksheet, another example there, beg your pardon. I'm not going to go through that. So in summary, this will give you an increase in cash in your business. It's one of the quickest ways that you can improve your cash flow and profitability. Whoops, there's actually one more thing I forgot to mention. As part of here, there we go, done. We want to make sure that once you've done all this, that you actually transpose some of the information into your calendar, because and then you can start to schedule it. And I recommend in the beginning, when you're first working through this exercise, do this every month. So what that means is work through a particular supplier every month. And then after that, you can do it on a quarterly basis in your store or whatever works for you. But whatever it is, as long as you're doing it at least quarterly, hopefully more. And it gets quicker every time you do it, and you will be surprised with the amount of savings that you can achieve in your store, which, as I was harping on about, leads to an increase in cash and increase in profitability. And the whole key that I keep harping on about is that you need to create a system here. And of course, you need to start taking action, because this is one of those strategies that involves a little bit of work in the beginning, because you'll either be calling your suppliers or you'll be implementing some of the strategies that you've thought about in your store. So there you have it. That's the expense reduction approach. If you have no, if you have any questions, just make sure you pop them in the comment section below. And if you want a copy of the worksheet, just pop the word worksheet below and we'll get it out to you. Until next time, much love, and we shall see you later.